powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Keep helping the station grow. Today, we've got a big one, UP Nation. Chicago Bears versus the Minnesota Vikings. This was the game during that slate of away games, 3 away games in a row that I think the majority of analysts and the majority of Minnesota Viking fans were kind of, worried about, because it was an opportunity for us to be able to go 9-2, which is better than 8-3. And this is a game that conceivably we could win. It's just one of those games where no matter what the team's records are, both always seem to play close games and both always seem to play each other tough. And I think the main concern was not necessarily on the offensive side of the ball for the Chicago Bears, but they've got a pretty vaunting defense. Their defense is not bad. And when you have a Sam Darnold, although he came back very nicely last week, that had been struggling in previous weeks, I mean, you have some concerns, and those concerns are pretty valid. But I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to be okay today. If they cannot turn the ball over, that's always the X factor. If we cannot have, untimely fumbles, untimely interceptions, I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to be okay today. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the game is going to be a lot closer than maybe what people would expect, because when you look at the records and you look at the trouble that the Chicago Bears have been having, especially on the offensive side of the ball, you can definitely see why people would trend towards the Vikings being able to blow the Chicago Bears out. But it never seems to work that way. I think the one thing that's going to work in the Vikings' favor is obviously Flo is going to play with the mind of a young kid at quarterback on the other side of the ball. And obviously Caleb Williams is very talented, but still, he's cutting his tooth in the league. First year under center, hasn't seen a whole lot to see in the NFL, especially when it comes to someone that can change the face of their defense like the Minnesota Vikings can and like Flo can. I just think it's going to be a tough night for the Chicago Bears. And I don't think that it's going to be a situation where on the fly, Caleb Williams has seen enough where he's going to be able to figure things out, nor will his offensive coordinator. I mentioned offensive coordinator because the Bears recently made a change last week with their offensive coordinator. So that, that's going to be an adjustment for the Chicago Bears. But the way I look at it, that also could be an advantage. Flo doesn't have a lot of film or a lot of tape on the tendencies of this offensive coordinator. So that check mark goes in to the Chicago Bears. And I think that at times when you don't have tendencies as a coach, when you watch film, that kind of hurts your scouting report a little bit. Not saying that the Minnesota Vikings should be worried. I'm just saying that is a check mark that you could probably put advantage Bears, just because you just don't have a lot of film on the tendencies of their offensive coordinator. But I think Brian Flores is someone that adjusts really well on the fly. Minnesota Vikings got to get their running game going. I think, man, when the Minnesota Vikings can run the football, that it helps Sam Darnold out. It takes the pressure off of Sam Darnold. So KLC's got to find a way to get that thing going. I don't know whether it's supplementing Cam Akers. Obviously I looked at Aaron Jones last week. I think he was hurt, especially with, that upper body rib injury. I think those type of injuries are painful. And he, I'm sure he got cleared to play with it, but just carrying the ball, getting hit all the time, I think helped to stifle that running game last week. And I also think the Tennessee Titans are definitely a team that's very formidable when it comes to stopping the run. Didn't help any, but they got to get that thing going against the Chicago Bears and against a good defense. If Sam Darnold's got to drop back and throw the ball 30, 35 times, I don't think we see the best of Sam Darnold, because when he has a large body of work throwing the ball like that, there's going to be about 4 or 5 passes that you're going to want to have back. Plus, you can't go off the play action pass anymore. Once you show your hand in terms of passing the rock like that a lot, 30, 35 times, defenses can pin their ears back and come at you a little bit. So the Minnesota Vikings, it's apparent. They've got to get that running game going. They made the decision last week to not go with Ed Ingram starting at right guard. And I think that's a huge move. I think it's a huge move, and we'll see if that continues to help bolster that offensive line. Last week, I thought Reisner did a pretty decent job, probably not his best job, self-admitted. Never played right guard before, but I think the more reps that he gets at it, he's going to be fantastic at it. So look for Reisner to continue to improve on that offensive line. Secondly, man, the Minnesota Vikings secondary, I think, they've been overly critiqued this year. I think they've been pretty solid. Have they had great games? Every single game? No, but give me a secondary in the league that plays lights out every single week. I don't think there's a whole lot of secondaries that play lights out in the week. So I think sometimes we're a little bit harsh on the Minnesota Vikings secondary. Man, those guys are on islands a lot because B-Flow likes the blitz, and they have to make different reads, and they have to disguise their looks all the time. So I think sometimes, man, that's got to be mentally exhausting and taxing. And I think overall they've done a pretty good job with that. KOC has got to call a great game today. I think another person that's been overly criticized, and there have been times when I've been critical of KOC, but you guys know KOC is in my camp. I love KOC. I just think he doesn't have to outsmart the room all the time. Call a great game. But let's get rid of these timely trick plays that really don't need to happen in important moments of a football game. Call the game. Get your run game going, get your pass game going, find ways to get Justin Jefferson involved. Look to integrate Hawkinson more. Let's keep Jordan Addison happy, giving him a couple of balls. Like, that should be your focus today. No flea flickers, no, quarterback out at wide receiver, Aaron Jones lining up at running back, none of that stuff. Let's just play ball. So Minnesota Vikings can get this game, 3 games on the road in a row. That is hard to do in the NFL, and that my hat is tipped to KOC, who should be the front runner, if not one of the front runners for NFL Coach of the Year. So it should be a good game today. Patrick Buchanan and I will be on the post game later on after the game, so look forward to that. The one thing that I've been really surprised at with Minnesota Viking fans is how upset a lot of fans, a lot of media members, a lot of podcasters have been at the national media that doesn't pay Minnesota Vikings attention. Man, this isn't new. Like, you guys haven't just come to the party. Like, anytime the Vikings find a way to do something good, the national media finds a way to ignore them. But it's a 50-50 prospect. Am I saying that the Minnesota Vikings shouldn't get attention? Absolutely not. Minnesota Vikings, 8-2, one of the best teams in the league, has a lot of different weapons on this team playing very well. Should they get more attention? Probably so. But am I mad that they're not getting the attention? Absolutely not. Am I bothered with it? Absolutely not. Because here's how you get people to talk about. Remember that old Bonnie Raitt song, Let's Give Them Something to Talk About? The Vikings have to give them something to talk about. They can't stub their toe down the stretch of this great run. They're 8-2. Don't limp in, because I'm assuming that the Minnesota Vikings are going to go to the playoffs. Don't limp into the playoffs some way. Keep playing good ball. Keep sending messages to the national media so the national media has to talk about you. We have been cynical in the past. We've talked about everybody's waiting for the Minnesota Vikings shoe to drop. And everybody's looking at, well, this is the Minnesota Vikings. We've always had bad luck. Well, the reason why we feel that way is that there have been times in the past where the Minnesota Vikings haven't been able to get over the hump or continue great play when they've had good seasons. You guys remember those seasons. Come on, keep it real. You think the national media don't remember those seasons? And then you have a guy at quarterback who has played sporadic football and doesn't have the best resume. The way the Minnesota Vikings can get the national media to talk about them and be relevant on some of the shows that you watch, because this is what I've heard. Yeah, you really don't see the Minnesota Vikings being talked about on First Take. You really don't see the Minnesota Vikings being talked about on Get Up. All the ESPN shows, Greeny, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, whoever you want to mention, the Minnesota Vikings are not on the tip of the tongue of these sports analysis people. And the Minnesota Vikings just got to win. Kevin O'Connell, I know he's not worried about that. He said it at the beginning of the season. People aren't talking about you right now, but the men in the room that we have right now, eventually they're going to be talking about you. Well, the way you do that is to continue to win football games. You can't stub your toe today. You can't stub your toe today. You've got to keep on building. And I'm talking to the fans. The Minnesota Vikings, they have to come through today. As good as they've been 8-2, you can't come and lay an egg against the Chicago Bears. You should beat them. Not saying it shouldn't be a tough game. Not saying you shouldn't struggle a bit, but you should beat the Chicago Bears today. No question. That's got to get done. Chicago Bears has to get done today. Sam Darnold has to play well. The offense has to stop looking inconsistent at times. These are the ingredients where if you want the national media to pay attention to our team, these are the things that they have to do. Because the resume of the Minnesota Vikings is no matter how hot they start, no matter what their record is, they're going to find a way to screw it up. So you just got to win. And I'm here to tell you, UP Nation, I don't think there's people out there saying, hey, we're not going to talk about the Vikings today. I just don't think the Vikings are relevant enough in people's minds when they're in these pre-production meetings. I don't think they're relevant in people's mind for people to pay a whole lot of attention to them, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just kind of the way it is with the Minnesota Vikings. The way you do that, the way you make them talk about you is to not stub your toe. And I don't see the Minnesota Vikings stubbing their toe at all today against the Chicago Bears. I think they do work against the Chicago Bears. It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough fight. But I think we're going to make enough plays where we can beat the Chicago Bears today. What are your thoughts? Put your thoughts in the comments. Hit me up. You know I'm going to answer them. I answer them all the time. Minnesota Vikings, tough game today. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Got a post-game show coming up later on after the game. Myself, Mr. Patrick Buchanan, getting after it, talking about a Minnesota Vikings victory. You can book that. It will be a Minnesota Vikings victory. Hope to see and engage with you all after the game. This has been Unconventional Playbook. We will make sure to see you. When we see you, Latre, take us home.
I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm a man? Am I